Welcome back to Letters from Rebellion, a space for the fears that we carry, the choices we avoid, the conformity we praise, and the chains we kiss. Reflections on courage, habits, and the inner rebellion that reshapes who we become. I'm gonna let you on a little secret. The beauty of broken systems is that they're the only place where creativity can actually be born. I don't know if you noticed, but we live in a world that rewards repetition. Not because repetition is something wise, but because it keeps everything predictable. Our habits, our choices, our identity, even our imagination becomes predictable. There are books that talk about repetition and teaches habits and effective habits or ineffective habits. Entire systems are built on the same principle. You can see that, take example like the schools. They teach you to give the same expected answer. Even your job, they train you to replicate a proven method. Even algorithm of every application on your phone, it trains you to consume the same content that you have consumed the day before. And step by step, life begins to narrow into something standardized. Eventually, it looks harmless from the outside, and everything appears like very organized. Everything is smooth, everything is familiar, and very easy to navigate. But if you take a deeper look, just beneath the surface, you realize that something essential starts to feel lifeless. Because every path that leads to the same familiarity, the instinct to create or the instinct to invent something that did not exist before starts to become weaker and weaker. And you start to feel that you're less like a participant in your own life, but more like a character or a witness in a script that you never wrote. And yet, despite all this pressure towards the familiarity and towards conformity, I feel that there is a strange countercurrent rising around us. You can notice it in fashion, you can see it in music, in design, in how the younger generations are trying to remix their identities. You see it in the refusal to accept a single aesthetic, or refusing a single role, or refusing a single way of existing. And that refusal is not a trend. It's not just to be different. It's actually the quiet revolt against the gravity of conformity. It is a reminder to all of us that the human mind was never built to repeat itself endlessly. And this is where the real conflict begins. Not inside our emotions, but inside the world that we move through. We are surrounded by structures that pull us towards the familiar, but at the same time, we are driven by instincts that want to push us beyond it. And this tension between these two forces creates some kind of a personal chaos. Not the emotional chaos of confusion, but the constructive chaos that appears when the old shape of our life can no longer contain what's trying to emerge. And this chaos is not the enemy. It is the pressure that wakes up the creative force that we forgot that we had. And in my opinion, what restores the disappearing self is never discipline, and it's never clarity, it's never confidence. In fact, it's creativity, and not the romantic version that people imagine about creativity, but in fact, the creativity as a force of survival. Creativity becomes the cure because it demands that you build something new instead of relying on repeating the same things which are not feasible anymore. Creativity interrupts the slow collapse, and it challenges the repetition. It forces you to meet yourself again, and it doesn't do this by offering you comfort, but it does this by requiring creation. Creativity at its core is never born in peaceful conditions. That's what I have realized. You don't need to be on a beach with a calm environment, with a clear mind, or sitting on a mountain cabin where everything feels good to be able to create. Actually, creativity arises when the old structures starts to collapse. And when these structures that you relied on begins to become loose, there is a strange beauty in that collapse. Not because, I'm not saying that falling apart feels good, but broken systems, they reveal a space where something new can finally enter. It's like a sunlight passing through a crack in the wall. This is where chaos enters the picture. Not the emotional chaos, but life chaos. Moments where stability breaks, where familiar rules stop working, where the world no longer responds to your old identity or to your old ways. It's when the system that shaped you starts to become weaker and collapses. Then, in this exact moment, your mind starts to search for a new form. And it is in that search that creativity gains its power. And I learned this during a period of my own life when the elements that I have depended on began to fall apart without a warning. Nothing dramatic happened. It wasn't really a public crisis or so, but it was a slow thinning of the framework that I have been standing on. Like my work started to lose its meaning, my direction starts to dissolve, and my daily rhyme became heavier instead of being supportive. So the first reflex, like everyone, I tried to hold everything together, to keep everything in shape. So I organized, I planned, I reasoned, I thought, and I spent nights awake. But the more I tried to strengthen this old structure and keep it together, the more I sensed that it no longer had a place for the person that I was becoming. And one night, exhausted from the effort to return to normal, I had my notebook with me. I didn't have any intention. And what began as a simple act of moving a pencil across the paper without a plan became actually quite a breach in the wall that I have built around myself. And it wasn't a breakthrough. It was simply a moment where my mind pushed far enough by life chaos and created something to stay alive. And that act became the first step out of a life that was no longer mine, and became the first step into a life that needed to be built rather than being restored. And all this taught me something simple, that when the system collapses, creation is the only honest response required. And this is why creativity cannot be treated as a luxury or as an artistic privilege, by the way. Creativity belongs to anyone. It belongs to everybody who refuses to disappear inside the life that has become too familiar. It belongs to the person who's rebuilding himself after a loss, or to the one who is shaping a new direction after he moved to a new city or to a new country. It belongs to the one reinventing his work because his old role no longer contains him. Or to the one whose identity expanded faster than his environment could hold. In other words, creativity is the expression of survival and never an expression of a comfort. And if you want a proof of what I'm saying, think of Van Gogh. Van Gogh was locked in the psychiatric hospital at Saint-Rémy. Locked doors, controlled routines, hallucinations, isolations, and a mind that would not rest. And in that confinement, with almost nothing supporting him, he painted the Starry Nights, a sky that continues to outlive every generation that studied it. It's the most famous painting. So he did not create it because he was inspired in such conditions. He created it for a reason, because the chaos inside him needed a form to stay alive, and his life shows something essential. Genius doesn't appear when there is order. Actually, genius emerges when the order breaks and the mind refuses to collapse with it. But this doesn't mean that creativity is reserved for the artists. Creativity enters any life. It enters any life that can no longer survive through repetition alone. It appears in the musician shaping sound from places where the language cannot reach. It appears in the founder of a business where he's imagining a new structure because the old one doesn't serve him anymore. It appears in the person who's rebuilding himself after he lost his dream. It appears in the young person recording his voice because no one around him speaks the truth that he feels. Creativity appears in everyone who uses chaos as a raw material. And creation doesn't require talent. Creation requires willingness. It requires the ability to look at a life that feels too small and decide that something must be built before the self disappears in it. That's in short. Creativity is the act that pushes you forward when everything else tries to pull you back into a pattern that you've already outgrown. This is why chaos is not the pit that people fear. Like the little finger said, chaos is not the pit, chaos is the ladder. Chaos is the junction where you stop trying to restore the past and begin to construct a future. It's the moment where your old identity breaks open and refuses to close again. Conformity wants you to protect the old shape, but creativity asks you to build the next one. And this next one will not come from safety and from comfort. It will come from invention. Look, the purpose of this episode is simple. I want the part of you that has been sleeping, that has been dormant, the mad genius beneath the surface, I want it to wake up. I want the part of you that has nothing to do with talent or reputation. This part, I want you to unleash it. It has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with your instinct, in fact. It is the part that once looked at the world and believed that you can shape it. It's the part of you that lost its voice inside repetition. And it is the part that can return the moment that you create something without waiting for a permission. So I would say let the illness end here and let the conformity lose its grip by allowing the chaos to open a doorway rather than closing one. So I would ask you to let the creativity become your cure. Unleash the mad genius inside you. Let it rise. Not perfectly, but consistently, through anything that you choose to build, whether you shape an idea or you record a track or you plan a trip or you create a ritual or a vision. The act itself matters more than the result, because creation is how you stay alive in a world that is constantly inviting you to disappear. And if you need a place to begin, I'm gonna tell you there's no place to begin. Start anywhere. The moment you start creating, even clumsily, the disease of conformity starts to become weaker and the self begins to return to its normal shape. And finally, if you follow this thread far enough, you will notice that every act of creation eventually demands something more than insight. It demands defiance, because the moment you stop obeying the structures that shaped you, there is a different fire that begins to form, one that doesn't aim at chaos, but it aims at direction. And this fire is where purpose stops being an idea and starts becoming a force. And this is where we're gonna go next.